quizzes are like an actionable extension of your brand messaging. Like, these are the things I want to say, and this is what I stand for as a brand, and format so people can experience it for themselves.
Welcome back to Duo On Air. I'm Abby.
And I'm Courtney.
And we're the ex-agency turned entrepreneurial team that puts the Duo in Duo Collective. Our boutique organic marketing agency specializes in SEO, social media strategy, and branding.
We're an everyday pair of business besties / marketing experts obsessed with helping our community learn more about what it takes to run a business.
Which is why on Duo On Air, we're not holding anything back. We're giving you all the info we know about how to grow your business organically so you can be the confident CEO you were made to be.
And how to navigate life as a small business owner.
Whether it's on your own or with your best friend by your side, so grab your coffee
or your mimosa, we don't judge,
and settle in for a quick value-packed episode of Marketing Tips.
Welcome back to the Duo On Air podcast. This is episode number 115, and today we're so excited to be talking to Kayla Dean, a website copywriter and the owner of The Literary Co. We have tons of copywriters in our world of business, and I'm sure you've heard us talk about the magic of a good copywriter for your website. But today we're talking about evergreen quiz funnels and copy tips that make your quizzes really shine and really work for you and your brand. Abby and I love a good quiz. Not only is it our favorite form of lead magnets, but it is also such a unique and personal way to get leads into your inbox. So without further ado, let's dive in and talk all things quizzes with Kayla. Hello, Kayla, and thank you for being on the Duo On Air podcast. We are so excited that you're here today.
I'm so excited to be here. Thank you.
Yes, you're welcome. So why don't you tell us a little bit about you and your businesses? We love to hear stories about how people got started. So why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, so I'm Kayla. I am a copywriter at my company, The Literary Co. So I started back in 2018, and I specialize in brand messaging, website copywriting, and quizzes specifically. But I also do sales copywriting, sales pages, email sequences, and things like that. So like I said, I got started back in 2018, and I always like to tell people I started my business by accident because I didn't really know I was starting a business. I was like, I have my bachelor's and my master's degree in English, and I had done a lot of freelance writing up until that point, but not copywriting. And after I got out of grad school, I discovered copywriting as, like a thing. It was something that I had learned more like creative writing, journalism kind of writing. And I, hadn't done copywriting in school, but I had that writing background, right? And I was like, oh, what do I want to do? Like, I really want to be a freelance writer. I didn't really want to go and, do the corporate thing.
Right.
So I was like, oh, this copywriting thing, like people seem to really need that. So I started like building up my experience there and, taking courses and taking on clients. And here I am like 6 years later, 150 plus clients later, and
doing the thing, you're doing
I can't
it.
believe it. Yeah, and I'm doing the thing. Yeah, and it's so crazy because like looking back, sometimes I go like, if I had known how hard it was, like would I have done it? But also if I had known how great it was, I think I would have been even more like wanting to go forward with it. So it's definitely
Right.
something I'm glad I did, but I think something people don't always talk about is like how hard it is to run a business.
Mm-hmm.
So it's been like so much learning and so many lessons, but I really love what I do.
Yeah. I love how you said, if I would have known how hard it would have been, would I still have done it? And I think that's a great question, right? Because being an entrepreneur or a solopreneur is hard work. It's like the dream, right? And it's flashy and it's exciting, but it is also, there's so much behind the scenes that happens as an entrepreneur, and it's hard, but your story is amazing. And that's so great that it just kind of like accidentally happened. Abby and I always preach about how amazing copywriters are because we could never do it. And I would like to say that like creatives kind of have this sense for copy too, but I am definitely like, I can write some snappy headlines every once in a while and I get really proud of myself. I'm like, Abby, oh my gosh, what do you think about this headline? And she's like, Courtney, you're amazing. That's hilarious. But like, ask me to write anything else. And I'm like, yeah, nope, I can't do this. So we always talk about how copywriters are like unicorns because you guys you make it work and you just do such great work. So kudos to you. We love copywriters.
Thank you.
So today we are going to be talking a little bit more about quizzes, which is so exciting because Abby and I have dabbled in a few quizzes for Duo. I can't remember when we did our first quiz. It was years ago, but we've worked with Interact and absolutely love it. It's such a fun way to, bring in potential followers and clients and have as a lead magnet. So we're so excited to kind of dive into that with you today. So quizzes as lead magnets are kind of the hype right now. And for a good reason. We recently had Interact on our podcast and our audience just loved that episode. So I think they're going to really love this episode as well. Can you walk us through why you love this type of lead magnet?
Yeah, so there's like so many reasons. Like not only are they fun and I think that's why they can be like very flashy and then people wonder like do they have substance? And yes, they absolutely
Right.
do because they work so well. The conversion rate on a quiz is just like much higher than on pretty much any other kind of lead magnet. And they're so interactive and personalized. I think that's something you can do with a quiz that you can't quite do with other lead magnets. Like if you have a PDF or something, not that anything's wrong with PDFs. I have some myself, but quizzes give you that unique opportunity to personalize to your audience because if you can have like, three, four, five, six like different, landing like
Outcomes.
results,
Yep.
outcomes for your quiz, it's like so cool to be like, oh my gosh, like I could serve my audience member really personalized, you know, value and resources and support. And that is just really going to stand out to people. And it's also just like a really great way to bring people into your world. They work like not only really well for like, just organically promoting them, but they're also really great, if you're doing paid ads, if you're keying up to a launch, if you're doing Evergreen, like they work in so many different situations and they work for a lot of different kinds of businesses as well.
Yeah, that's awesome. I love just like the personalization aspect of it too. I think
Yeah.
people get excited with quizzes, right? You said like they're fun, but it can really you can
Yeah.
really hone in on specific clients or niches, or let's say you do have a niche, but even when you have a niche, you have specific clients in those niches, right? So it
Yeah.
can really boil down and get to be more personalized for them, for that audience. And I think your audience craves that, right? They want to feel seen and heard and not just talking to the masses. We want to talk to those specific people. So I love that.
Exactly.
Yeah. So, what
Yeah.
role then does good copy strategy play in an evergreen quiz funnel when it comes to conversion? Because I think, if we didn't work with copywriters, I don't think we would put very well successful quizzes together because, like I said, that's not what we do. So, what is that really good copy strategy for those quizzes?
Yeah, so I really think like with quizzes, like sometimes people look at them and maybe they don't really necessarily realize like how much copy goes into it because, a lot of people think of like, the question, that essential question at the top of the quiz that you're
Right.
trying to go to the end and get the answer to, and then they think about the questions and the answers, but they don't always think about like the landing page you landed on to take the quiz that enticed you to take the quiz and like the results pages for the quiz and all of those like I've written some like really long ones and for good reason too because you really want to make sure that you're serving up a really good result like that outcome is really value driven like there's a good payoff at the end and people go wow it was worth it for me to answer these questions and I'm kind of getting something out of it instead of like something like really short that they're like, oh, okay, cool, that's my
Right.
type, I'm done. Like they can go deeper, you
Exactly.
can add resources, you can really like give them things. And you can follow it up with a nurture sequence as well. And yeah, I think some people think too, like having a quiz is enough to see the conversions. And while, you will see some, like having that copy like really work on multiple levels, like making sure it's conversion driven, making sure like your audience and how to speak to them is going to be like really important, like doing the audience research, incorporating it into the copy that you write. I always like to tell people that quizzes are like an actionable extension of your brand messaging. Like you kind of have like, these are the things I want to say, and this is what I stand for as a brand. And, these are things that people know us for, but like you can really implement that and bring it to life in an interactive format so people can experience it for themselves. And that's just something like you really do need copy because it's going to guide them along a journey and just take them through an experience. And that's what good quizzes are all about.
Right. I love that. Yeah, I've definitely taken those quizzes in the past where it's like, I can't even remember. It's so vague, but it's like, what is your perfect dream vacation? Right. And it like you take it, you're so excited, you're going through all the questions, and then you just get this tiny blurb at the end and you're like, wait, what? That's it? Like you're not dropping me somewhere and giving me more information and like telling me more things and trying to convert me. So I love that you talked about how, it starts with the questions, sure. And like those are maybe the easiest things to write, but how are you guiding them through that? Like based on their answer for this question, what is that next question that comes? And then that next question, and then what is their result? And instead of just a tiny blurb, you can give them a whole landing page, right? This whole page that helps convert them into, following you or being a potential client or downloading that other resource or being in your ecosystem. So I think it's so important to you have that quiz, right? But what comes after? And I think that's where a lot of people probably struggle. And that's where that copy is so, so, so important. Not even from an SEO perspective, but like you said, I love that you touched on branding because it is an extension of your brand. And that's where you can do a little bit more of that storytelling too. So I think that's so awesome that you brought like that branding piece into it. And I'm the designer on the Duo, so I like nerd out anytime people talk about branding. So I love that.
Yeah.
So can you walk us through the process of creating an effective evergreen quiz funnel from concept to implementation?
So we always start with that concept. We really want to make sure that the question is enticing. It's something people really want to know the answer to. And, that it's going to be like a rich subject area because sometimes I've even experienced this myself where you're like, oh, that'd be a cool idea for a quiz. But like if you get to where the question feels like unanswerable or not that enticing or, maybe just not a strong hook or it's been done a lot of times,
Hmm.
you might want to put the right angle on it because having that angle is really going to be key. Having a strong concept coming right out of the gate is going to be really important. So usually what I'll do with clients is like I'll present them with a few ideas and kind of see like what is the strongest one, like which one do we go, yeah, I think this would be like the perfect thing. So I'll go and iterate and present a few things and they'll kind of go, yeah, let's do that one. So I'll kind of go forward with that one. And then we're really thinking about the segmentation. And what I mean by this is the different outcomes that people are getting from the quiz. We really want to make sure that it's like I was saying earlier, like that it's value driven. There's a lot of like,
Yep.
resources. They're feeling like, yes, this is accurate. Like this is an answer that I would have wanted to get to this question. So we really want to make sure that that segmentation is really solid, that we're looking at your audience and not just kind of like your ideal client more generally, but then we're kind of breaking that down into, you know, four, five, six, however many like
Right.
different people that we're trying to get that into. So we can kind of think about this in terms of like sometimes if it's a very like we might be thinking about your different services in your offer suite and going, oh, well, this kind of client would be more driven to this versus this kind of client would be more driven to this. I've done quizzes like that before. It could be different types of industries. It could be, from early business owners, like less than a year in business, to like people that have been in business for 10 years and they need a little bit more of a sophisticated solution. So, there's a lot of different ways that you can segment, and then we just kind of see how many segments do we need to have. And then from there, and this is something I think that isn't always known or when people are just kind of creating their own quizzes is creating those landing pages first is really going to be key because if you're just kind of like writing the questions and answers before you have the results, you're not necessarily going to know like, oh, like what is this leading to? It's kind of great because if you have those, results mapped out, those landing pages written out, you know what resources you're sending people to. It's almost like the questions and answers are like reverse engineering, getting from like A to B is almost like how I think of it is just this kind of, A to B journey. And I guess there's a couple different types of B or there's, A, B, C, D.
Right.
So,
Yep.
so yeah, it's just kind of a cool journey. And then, um, once we do those questions and answers, then, I like to go back at the beginning and go, okay, so that original working title that we had, like, is that still the title? Do we need to like zhuzh up the title a little bit more? What do we want to say on the front end of the quiz to make it really, really enticing? And then what do we want to say on the other end where we're doing our email sequence and we're thinking about, okay, we have a full funnel. Like what are we doing now? What are we leading to them to? I always like to make sure that I create quizzes that are very like goal oriented, thinking about like what are the outcomes we want to lead to? Why are we doing this quiz? Like how is this going to serve your business? So I think when we can do that, it's a better way to measure success.
Right, right. I love that you said that. Yeah, because a lot of people, I think, in this quiz ecosystem, or if they want to start a quiz, again, we keep going back to the word fun because they are fun. But I
Yeah.
think a lot of people just think, oh, I want to do this because it's fun. They're not thinking about that end result or that conversion or what that next thing is after they get their answer, right? Like, then where do
Yeah.
we drop them? So I love that you are goal oriented. I think that's so smart. And then I love when you mentioned that you start with that landing page first, because I think a lot of people, when you think about quiz, you're like, oh, okay, what is this quiz and what are the questions and what are the few different segments like you were talking about that we want to have as a part of the quiz. But then you're like, well, then what? So I love that you start with that landing page first, because that almost gives you the questions that you need for your quiz, because here this is where you're dropping them, right? This is where you're giving them extensive content that they will be dropped into after they take that quiz. So I think that's awesome. You kind of almost start backwards, right? And then you work forward to get to your questions for that quiz.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. Reverse engineering it. And then it's like, I think those quizzes just come out, so much better.
Yeah, yep. I would believe so. So a lot of the times people, again, quizzes are fun and we don't think about that end goal. And you just talked about how you really like to make them goal oriented. What should we be thinking about from an ROI perspective for these quizzes?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. So yeah, like I was saying, I'm like goal oriented. I always love to do this on all my projects. So, we really want to be thinking about what we're doing this quiz for. Like, is it for a launch? Like, are we keying up for
Hmm.
launch? Do we want to tie the concept to some sort of like, course or group program or product or something like that? Is it an evergreen thing? Are we just trying to grow your community like more generally with like, we might be doing some, sales to them in the future? Are we selling, a high ticket offer at the end of the funnel, a lower mid ticket offer? You know, is it a course? Is it a service? So you kind of think about some of these different things like what kind of services are we sending them to? What kind of nurture is required there? Um, what do we want people to know and experience as part of your brand? So that's really, really key. And of course we can make those like numerical goals as well, thinking about,
Hmm.
how many leads do we want to get, or if we spend, x amount of ad dollars, and all of that kind of stuff, but just on a very like holistic level. I mean, especially like if someone were, DIYing their quiz, I think even if we can think about it more from a level of like, you know what am I trying to sell, or what outcome am I trying to get out of this? I think that, can be the most simple way to measure success. Cause I think sometimes, especially like with ROI, like we might just like pull numbers out of space, or go, this
Right.
person over here got, 10,000 leads from it. So I'm just going to do that too. And it's like, those kinds of things can really vary depending on, so many factors. So
Hmm.
yeah.
Yeah, especially like who the quiz is for, what it's for, like what are you trying to promote or what are you trying to get out of it? So yeah, I think that again, working with someone like you and really going back to that goal for what the quiz is specifically needing to do for your business.
Yeah.
I think it's so funny that you said that. I think when we see huge success out there, right? We're like, oh, we want 10,000 leads from this, but that might not that's a great goal, right? But that might not necessarily be the specific goal for this specific quiz. So I think that that's really important to kind of like talk through that and figure out what your quiz should be doing and kind of setting those realistic goals and what that could be doing for you.
Yeah.
So when it comes to quizzes, what are some main mistakes that you see when people are building out their quizzes, whether that's, the goals that they have or the copy that they're writing or their intention for the actual quiz? What are some of those common top mistakes that you see?
Yeah, definitely. I feel like a big one is like not spending enough time on the segmentation and just kind of like I don't know. I think with quizzes, we can get shiny object syndrome and get like super excited and be like, yeah, I'm gonna get a quiz up. And, we want to get them out there. And something I see a lot is I think everyone wants a quiz, but like, I think something I've heard a lot is, people like, they go and they try to create it and then they're like, oh, a lot goes into this. Like, this is kind of
So
harder than I
much.
thought. Like, it looks
Yes.
really easy. And then I think they go, oh, like, I got to do all this, like, market research and segmentation,
Mm-hmm.
and I need to figure out like who is this going to speak to, and I think sometimes like we want to get the quiz out there because it's like cool or trendy, but it's like if it's if it's not going to like speak to your audience and you're not going to be able to like provide them a lot of value with like resources and things like that, it would be better to like not rush it. As I think sometimes people can like either rush it or just like never put it out there either, because something with quizzes too is you can definitely iterate on them, like put them out there for a few months, see how they do, um tweak the title or see what are the most popular results, see how your audience is segmenting and what they're responding to. And, I know with Interact too, I really love working with Interact. It depends on which membership tier you have, but I know with some of the membership tiers, you can kind of even see like how people answered questions, which is like so, so cool
Oh,
because
yep.
you can get such like detailed data about your audience and, really get to know them. So, I think it's really important to make sure that like you're doing this to, not only get to know your audience, but like provide value and just making sure that segmentation is really impactful.
Mhm, mhm. Yeah, I feel like the segmentation part of it is definitely one of the heaviest parts of it that might get overlooked, or once you're in it, you're like, "Oh gosh, like I didn't think about, how, they go through these questions and there's going to be different people with different, how they answer those questions, right? And what do those segments look like?" Because again, people just want to get them out because they're fun. And when you're on the other side of the quiz doing the quiz, you might not see all the work that goes into it, right? Because you're just taking this fun quiz and you're going to get this fun result. But
Yeah.
to do it on the other side, you're building the quiz. That is so much work. And I think that's where a lot of people
Mm.
don't realize how much work they are, but they're so beneficial too. And they're just like a really fun lead magnet and a way to bring people into your ecosystem.
Yeah.
So we've talked about Interact. You just mentioned Interact as one of those platforms that you actually love too. But what other quiz platforms are you working in or that you love to work in?
Typeform is a good one as well. They have some really cool interactive elements, really pretty forms. So primarily those two, Interact and Typeform, I would say are like the best and my favorite and the ones that, my clients tend to use the most as
Mhm.
well.
Mhm. That's awesome. Yeah, it's really fun to kind of dive into their platforms and see, how you can make it specific to your brand and how you can design it and how you can make it interactive. So we've really loved Interact. We haven't tried the other one yet, but yeah, maybe someday in the future. So
Yeah.
can you share a case study or two of some of your clients where you've brought all of this to life? Because I think that's where our audience would really love to hear, just like kind of, the clients that you've worked with, how it came to life, what were the results, what was the quiz, those segments, the landing page, all of it. Just give us a few client examples and walk us through those processes.
Yeah, so I really loved a few months ago, I worked on a quiz funnel for Abby, who has an OBM and a VA agency. And so we created this really cool quiz that was leading to all these different kinds of segments because in her business, like they have all different kinds of offers, like, OBM services, VA services, system setups, things for VAs specifically. And so we're like, we have a lot of different, people we can speak to. So we really want to make sure that those segments in this particular case, we were kind of thinking in terms of like, the different types of business owners and maybe even the types of services that they might funnel really well into, for a primarily like service driven business. And so, it correlated really well with her rebranding. Her business name is Well Balanced Business. And so we were like, what would be so cool to bring, her brand message of this idea of like having a really well balanced business and, having like a sustainable business that helps you like, live your life and enjoy your life and,
Yep.
have great experiences and be present with your family. Like, so, we took that and turned that into a quiz on, having a well balanced business and kind of getting your blueprint for that. So kind of getting some tips around, how can you get your business in shape so that you can, have that well-balanced business for yourself. So yeah, so it was really, really cool to, create that with her. And she's someone that I've worked with in the past. So yeah, so we created those segments. Loved seeing how that brand messaging was like coming to life in her quiz as well. And it was so cool because she published her quiz along with her rebrand. And within like less than a week, like she already had someone like in her funnel, like who had booked a call to like become a client with her agency, which was so cool because, you know, she was kind of like, well, it'll be really cool to kind of like bring people onto our email list and grow our community. And, perhaps at some point down the road, like, we might be able to bring them in as clients. But it was really cool to see, like, yes, we can do that too. We can kind of do that nurturing, bringing people into our world, but it can also like directly lead to like people booking calls, people becoming clients, like making actual like sales at that time in the quiz funnel. And I think a really well created quiz funnel kind of allows for those kinds of options, like depending on what kind of journey that you're on. And that was just really cool to see. She even has something she did with her scheduler in that quiz that was really, really cool. She even had it like kind of titled a little bit differently in her backend system. I think she uses Dubsado. So she had that typed in a little bit differently. So she would know that that person came in, to that result and booked a call like to that
Oh, that's
scheduler. So it was really
amazing.
cool.
So she knew
Yeah.
their results and was able to kind of like tailor her communication and when she met them, that experience. That's amazing. I love that.
Yeah. Yeah. So I loved that one. It was like such a direct, correlation too. So it's like I think good funnels can kind of do both of those things.
Right, right. Yeah. And I think that's the thing that sometimes we don't think through when we're thinking about these quizzes too, are those funnels. Like from here, where do they go? And from there, where do they go? And like how do they end up in our ecosystem and want to stay there? Right. So I think a lot of that is really just that value driven content and a lot of that coming through that specific copywriting and that brand voice and tone and all of that. So I think that's amazing.
Yeah.
Have you had any other clients that you've worked with where they've had like really unique quizzes or really outstanding, ROI where you're like, wow, this is incredible. Do you have anything that you could share with that?
Yeah, I did another quiz that was really cool for like an operations interior designer. She's still like, getting it ready and getting it published. But what I really loved about that one, that was a different kind of quiz because, she has a lot of different like products and courses and programs. And like something we found with her, a big goal of her quiz was to kind of help people find out like which offer was right for them because she has so many offers, like so much incredible value and like a ton of free resources and a free newsletter that goes out every Friday, like just incredible stuff for her community. And we're like, okay, like how can we kind of have this be a really good entry point for someone that's like, hey, I'm an interior designer, like I'm liking your brand. I really like your stuff, but like, what's right for me? Where do I start? And so we really made sure that the outcomes that they were coming away with were going to kind of point them to, both free and paid, like free low ticket, mid ticket, high ticket, like different things within her offer suite. So we were kind of looking at, okay, like someone who's really new, like what would they need to get their operations set up really, really well versus someone more advanced? Like, what does that person need? Is there maybe like scaling into an agency or something like that? So I think it's a really good example of how it can work with a lot of different services and products. And, it isn't necessarily dependent on, oh, I have to have this kind of specific offer or else it won't work for me. It's like, no, it really does work for so many different kinds of businesses, which is so fun.
Right, different offerings too. Like it doesn't have to be super specific or anything like, oh, I'm just going to drop them to this product and hopefully they buy that product. It can be way more
Yeah.
than that. So I think that's
Yeah.
the really fun thing about quizzes, again, is that segmentation and then just like how deep you can go within each of those segments.
Yeah, I love it.
That's awesome. So when it comes to quizzes, let's say somebody, one of our people listening right now, our audience, they want to start a quiz. What and they don't know where to start, let's say, and they are maybe a DIYer. What would you tell them? like how to get started, right? Without feeling overwhelmed? Or do you have any specific examples for like just a small quiz to kind of throw it out there, test the waters, see if they like it. And then from there, maybe they want to make the quiz a little bit more robust, or maybe they want to add a different quiz that has all of these segments. If somebody's just kind of first starting and they want to dabble in it just a little bit, what advice would you give for them? Or do you have any like specific quote unquote quiz examples that you would have them get started with?
Yeah. Oh, I love that question. And I love the idea too that they can, do a smaller quiz, like do something more pared down. Like instead of going, oh my gosh, I need to have like 6, 7, 8 different like outcomes. I mean, you could have it be like three and do something really simple, like you said, to test out the waters, see how it goes. And it's like I was saying earlier too, like you can build your quiz over time. You can A/B test different things. Like you can put something out there, see how people respond, iterate a little bit. Um, there's a lot of different options. Yeah, I would definitely say, spend some time thinking about that concept. Do a little audience research if you need to. I have found like so much value from just interviewing people in my audience, or doing polls or surveys, and just kind of getting a feel for where they are, because that can give you just some really invaluable information. Just by talking to a couple of people, you can get a little bit of an idea of like where people are, what they might be struggling with, like how can you help them a little bit. And yeah, I think you can just do like a simpler quiz, see how it goes. And if you see it kind of growing and doing really well, you can add in more results, or you know glow up the title a little bit. Because I know sometimes I've done quizzes where I'm like, we had a working title, and then I went back and I was like, oh, I actually think we could say this a little bit more simply. Like, we might actually be overcomplicating this. We can make it really simple. And then that question comes across as like really clear and to the point. So I would say don't be afraid to iterate. I think that's very normal. Like, I think we can iterate and make changes without having to like tear everything down. And we can just go, oh, interesting. Okay, people responded this way. Maybe I'll make this little change, and test it out over the next month and see how it
Right.
goes. So, I would say don't be afraid to do that. I think everyone has to do that in some way with like their marketing, seeing what lands with their messaging, and that's just completely normal. So
Hmm.
don't feel like you can't do that.
Yeah, I love that. I think that probably would help too to clarify who those segments are, right? Like you're going to have different people respond differently within your audience. So it's like, oh, okay, well, these people are replying this way. So maybe they fall into this segment, whereas we have these replies over here where they could fall into that segment. So I think that could even help like clarify the different segments that you might need for your quizzes as you begin to build them or as you add on to them. So I think that's really important too, to just do some market research and don't be afraid to ask your audience and get
Yeah.
things in their own words too. I think that's something that Abby and I talk about a lot is when we speak, right? Sometimes we definitely try to take out the jargon, but sometimes we are in this business and Abby and I come from corporate. So we were used to that jargon, right? So when we're saying all these jargon words, that might not be how our audience is speaking or thinking or talking, right? So when you talk to
Yeah.
your audience and you ask them these questions, you're going to get their words and sometimes Abby and I are like, oh my gosh, we've been saying it like this, but our audience, talks about it like this. So I think it's so
Yeah.
important too, especially from a copywriting perspective, to know how your audience is speaking, because that's how you want to speak to them and with them versus sounding all jargony, right? You don't want to confuse
Yeah.
them. You want to sound authentic and like conversational and have it make sense. So I think that's super important too. Have you ran into an instance from a copywriting perspective with quizzes where people have started and it's just way too complicated and people are putting too much jargon into it or too much confusing language into it and just like helping them pare that down to make it a little bit more simplistic?
Yeah, I definitely feel like I've seen maybe examples just, floating around out there, not like with my clients. Usually my clients come in wanting like, they're starting new with quizzes and they haven't done a quiz
Yep.
before. But yeah, I definitely feel like I've seen that, just out, on the internet. Or, something I've seen people do is like the concept is a little like overclouded or overcomplicated. And it's like, I don't know, sometimes the simplest quizzes, like sometimes I'll see things and go, oh, that's so like it's just such a simple question. It's just so
Mm-hmm.
incisive and compelling. And it like I don't know, sometimes we can overthink it and make the concept too complicated. We think we have to have a lot of bells and whistles on it, and it's like, truthfully, we don't have to. Like, if it can be clear and give people clarity, like,
Yeah,
that
to the yep,
really.
nice and to the point. Yep. I love that. Yeah, I think that too helps to take out the overwhelm of quizzes because I think again, they're fun and they seem like maybe they could be easy, but once you dive into it, it is a lot of work. Like we've talked about, it's not just a few questions and one answer. You know, you want more than that and able to convert
Yeah,
them and to give them more of that valuable content. So I
for
love
sure.
that. So, do you have any closing tips or takeaways that you want our audience to have before we go?
Yeah, I mean, I definitely think, like, I think quizzes are so underutilized. I think more people should, consider them as part of their strategy. I think that they work for so many different types of businesses. So, I've had people go, "Oh, like, could this work for, a service business? Do I have to have digital products? Or, I have all digital products. Would this work for me?" And it's like, yeah, absolutely. Like, it can work for so many different types of businesses. Um, yeah, don't be afraid to iterate. Ask people, like, don't be afraid to ask, because I found in most cases, like, people are happy to help. And especially like when you're providing value and you're making something for them, like, people are excited about that. So don't be afraid to ask, and don't be afraid to iterate.
Yeah, I think it's definitely one of my favorite lead magnets. I think it's just so fun and you can just have so much fun with it and personalize it and it's so
Yeah.
different than what we've kind of seen out there in the past. So I love quizzes. I'm a huge advocate for quizzes. So I think
Yeah.
if you're looking for a new lead magnet or if you haven't done it, quizzes are such a fun place to start and to just keep growing. And just having, a couple different quizzes. You don't need to go quiz overload, but we've had a couple of on our site and it's just they've been really fun to build and it's been really fun to see the
Yeah.
outcome of how people are reacting to those and coming in. So, why don't you tell our audience where they can find you and if you have anything exciting on the horizon?
Yeah, so you can find me on my website at theliterary.co. It's also the same on Instagram, just theliterary.co. I share a lot of, like, tips and advice, and about quizzes and copywriting and messaging. So definitely go give me a follow.
Yay, perfect. Well, thank you so much, Kayla. We really appreciate you. And this was such a great episode.
Thank you so much. This was lovely.
If you liked this episode, please be sure to share it with a friend and subscribe so you don't miss any new episodes dropping every Monday. Plus, if you haven't already, please leave us a review and don't hesitate to share any new episode ideas. We love hearing from you and creating this content for you. See you next week.